Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. My oh my, we've had so much going on. For starters, in case you missed it, we've got a new addition to the Pardon Pie family, Tara Dublin. Make sure you go follow her on Twitter at Tara Dublin Rocks. Also, pick up a copy of her book while you're at it. Make her day, The Sound of Settling. A very fun and interesting read compared to the things we talk about on this podcast. But yeah, we're heading toward the do or die time for the 2024 election. Go ahead and hit up JoeBiden.com. Get that man like $1 a month or something. Help his campaign staff up and get prepared to try and save our democracy. And make sure to grab like one other person you know and tell them about the podcast. Make sure they subscribe and tune in every single week. We got a lot of things coming up for you this year. We need all the support that we can get. So if you do your part and help us grow our audience, we'll do our part and help elect Joe Biden in 2024 and save American democracy. And this is the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. My, oh my, it has been such a god-awful, insane, and crazy week. It never stops. Trump's lawyers are out here flipping like the U.S. Gymnastics team. It's bananas. Just insanity. It never ends. But before we get to all the crazy news, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Sheets and Giggles. My man, Colin D. McIntosh, an absolutely fantastic and wonderful person with the most awesomely soft sheets on planet Earth, wants to make sure that you're getting the best possible sleep every single night by having the best possible sheets on your bed. Or whatever it is you sleep on. Like some of you guys might be out here on like a Naked and Afraid challenge somewhere out in the wilderness somewhere, you know. And if you do like that show, I mean, if they had sheets from Sheets and Giggles, they would make it through the 14 days every single time because they're just that great. So make sure you pick up a set from sheetsandgiggles.com. And of course, if you'd like a little discount, we've got some links in the show notes for you to do so. All right, we got a little pocket pardon episode for you today. Just to briefly catch up on some of the latest developments in the political landscape. Of course, we're going to start off with the biggest scandal in politics. Get this. Joe Biden loves his brother and loaned him money. And his brother paid him back. Can you fucking believe it? Like, who would have thought? Like, what a disaster for the Biden White House. I mean, for God's sakes, you can't loan your brother money when you're not an elected official and then have your brother pay the loan back. Like, you can see why Republicans are totally up in arms about that. And, of course, the fact that Joe Biden actually loves his family. I mean, I can see after, nearly a decade of Trump, how that, in their eyes, is an atrocity. No, I'm totally kidding. Like, this is absolute bullshit. And, like, even Fox News is laughing at Republicans for trying to paint this as some kind of scandal. Like, Joe's brother wrote him a check in 2018, I think, for $200,000 loan repayment, as it says on the check. I whoop-de-doo, man. Like, who gives a shit? And these dudes are insane. Like, they have nothing. They just, Comer and his attempt to, like, literally create the weaponization of government against political opponents is just flailing and failing as well. Just endless fails by these guys. I mean, they keep trying, though. You gotta appreciate the effort. They don't seem to give up. But no. But you know who did give up? That's right. Trump lawyer Jenna Ellis pled guilty in the Georgia RICO case being brought by Fani Willis, which means that not only do we have Scott Hall, who flipped a couple of weeks ago, we add Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro to the mix, and that means along with Jenna Ellis here, we're down to 14 criminal defendants. And if Fani Willis keeps whittling down defendants and turning them into witnesses, pretty soon here, we're only going to have a single trial with a handful of co-defendants that includes Trump. Now, we'll have to get into a little bit more of the specifics on the implications of all these lawyers flipping and cooperating with Fani Willis's office when we get the girls back. But as far as Jenna Ellis goes, like, the person this implicates the very most is one, Rudy Giuliani. You guess it. America's fucked up mayor. I don't know how familiar you are with former NBA owner Donald Sterling and one V. Stiviano, but in the words of Stiviano, I would say that Jenna Ellis is Rudy Giuliani's right-hand arm man. Go Google that. That debacle will give you a little giggle for sure. But yeah, she's like most intimately connected with Rudy Giuliani. Like over the course of, the end of 2020 and 2021, every time you saw a little blonde-haired girl hanging out with Rudy, that was Jenna Ellis. She was everywhere. They were inseparable. Like, she was heavily involved in everything Giuliani is associated with. And, to think that she almost made it this long and endured everything from Rudy Giuliani shitting his own face and being farted on in court by Rudy Giuliani to still reach the point where she flips and cooperates. I mean, what was it all for? Endured all of that for nothing. Well, I guess Trump should have paid her legal bills. Maybe that would have been potential incentive for her to not flip. Of course, I don't even know if Trump having his PAC, pay his RICO co-conspirators bills, like, is that furtherance of the conspiracy? Who knows? Maybe that's why Trump hasn't bothered, but probably just, look, he's spending $1 gazillion as it is. It's tough trying to afford 18 extra legal teams just to keep all your co-defendants from flipping. Man. My favorite thing about Jenna Ellis, though, is that on the social medias, she was one to resort to the, cry more, libs. And then here she is in court crying. Cry more, bitch. And of course, she's not the only one to have flipped. It appears as though our Pardon the Insurrection podcast predictions of Mark Meadows cooperating with the feds that we had postulated as like early as spring of last year, just given that we couldn't understand why he wasn't on anyone's radar, appears to be correct. Now, I'm not entirely certain if he has a full cooperation agreement, but he appears to have some kind of immunity deal in exchange for his testimony, and he won't be prosecuted for anything that he said before the grand jury. Now, of course, I'm absolutely sure that includes the fact that he has to tell the complete and total truth, and if he lies, the deal goes up in smoke, and he therefore could, in fact, still be prosecuted by Jack Smith's office, not to mention the fact that he's also under indictment in Georgia. So it's not like he's totally skating here. He's got a bunch of bullets to dodge to figure out a way to fulfill his obligations to Jack Smith's office, as well as to dodge these charges in Georgia, which likely means some sort of plea arrangement with Fani Willis's office as well. I don't know what the nature of that agreement might look like, given that she's requiring everyone who cooperates to plead guilty to at least, a handful of misdemeanors, if not a single felony, even though likely it wouldn't result in jail time. But that's up to Meadows and his legal team and any negotiations that might go on between Jack Smith's office and Fani Willis's office down there in Fulton County. And, of course, if you just go back to the indictment in D.C. by Jack Smith's team, you're like, it's very, very odd and strange and suspicious that they mention all of these unindicted co-conspirators, yet they never make note of Mark Meadows, yet there's like details included in the indictment that only Mark Meadows could possibly know, and this explains why. So, it's nice to have that little prediction validated. Good job, us. Patting ourselves on the back over here. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to dive into the implications of that a little more when I get the girls back together. And if you think the flipping stops there, you'd be wrong. I know a lot of people miss this because of all the focus and attention that was devoted to Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro late last week. But a Michigan Republican who was accused of participating in the fake elector plot in their state had all criminal charges dropped last Thursday after having reached a cooperation deal with the Michigan State Attorney General's office. So James Renner, this guy was one of the 16 Republicans who acted as fake electors for Trump in 2020 in the state of Michigan, and I assume that this person will be cooperating against not only those fake electors from the state of Michigan, but anyone who helped orchestrate the plot that they might be aware of. And like, this is really huge news because this is like another prosecution that could reach all the way up to Trump, but that's not subject to like the possibility of being pardoned by Trump if he somehow manages to win the 2024 election. So given the fact that Trump won't have the ability to potentially dangle a presidential pardon in this case, this could lead to other fake electors deciding that they would like to cooperate with prosecutors in the state. And much like Fonnie Willis's office, we're going to have a flip-a-palooza. It's like everybody's going to sign up for cooperation deals, try to get the best deal as soon as possible, and maybe even escape prison time altogether. And again, I don't know the nature of the relationship between like the Michigan State AG's office and Jack Smith's investigation, but I assume like any cooperators who sign up for like full cooperation agreements will likely have to testify in any federal election cases revolving around the attempted theft of the 2020 election. So, yeah, I mean, it just like the shit is just piling up nonstop. Like, it's endless. It's crazy. But yes, fairly huge development that not a lot of people paid much attention to, but that could have a drastic impact on, things going forward in the 2024 election. And of course, like, I would assume that other states might be dropping charges against their slates of fake electors in the near future, in such a fashion as to make sure those charges go forward before the 2024 election, or rather so that those trials resulting from those charges go forward before the 2024 election, if not to create a situation where potential defendants cooperate and flip and, give other states the opportunity to work their way up the criminal chain. And if, you think Trump is facing a lot of criminal legal jeopardy, well, he's also facing a lot of civil legal jeopardy as well. So one of the developments over the course of this civil trial in New York about the Trump organization and how it just engages in nonstop fraudulent behavior. One of the claims Trump org was making is that like a 2016 valuation of Trump's Wall Street skyscraper to the tune of $735 million was based on the capitalization rate provided by a former Cushman & Wakefield executive director appraisal. And that Cushman & Wakefield executive director testified and said, they ain't ever asked me to do none of this shit. Like, he flat out denied not only not remembering those conversations, but in fact that none of those conversations had ever happened. And, his advice was one of the things Trump org repeatedly relied upon in reaching these particular evaluations for their properties. By the way, that building appears to only be worth around $220 million. So Jesus fucking Christ. He lied to the tune of $515 million and tried to blame it on this dude. And dude was like, bro, my name is Bennett and I ain't in it. Like, this defense was just, I don't understand. Like, it was all smoke and mirrors and it just went up in a puff of smoke. So, I mean, the judge is clearly going to hold him liable for just massively overinflating his assets. And given like it's a bench trial, there's no jury. I mean, this is pretty fucking damning evidence and testimony. And like, that's not all. That's just like one of the many damning developments in the civil trial in New York. Another being Allen Weisselberg. We didn't have the opportunity to talk about this last week, but Weisselberg reached an agreement with Alvin Bragg to testify. Now, it's very important notation of the specific language there, to testify in the civil trial against Trump org. But part of the problem here is that, given that he didn't agree to a full cooperation deal, it'd be very difficult to hold him accountable. And I'll give you an example of this, right? So he agrees to testify. He gets on the stand. You're like, all right, Allen Weisselberg, what do you know about this evaluation of the Wall Street skyscraper by the Trump organization and how they arrived at a figure of $735 million? Mr. Weisselberg answers, I don't remember. It's like, all right, well, can you prove that he does remember and he's just lying? Yes, and that's the and that is the difficulty that comes with only reaching an agreement for Weisselberg to testify and not fully cooperate. Because in a full cooperation agreement, Bragg just be like, look, man, judge, he ain't fucking cooperating like he's supposed to. We can't get him to answer questions fully and truthfully. You don't have to bring a perjury charge, which is very difficult to prove in court, in order to show that he violated the deal. The judge can just be like, all right, lock his ass up. But in this particular case, Weisselberg was doing a lot of, I wasn't involved with that. I don't remember that. Didn't have anything to do with that. And as it turns out, Weisselberg may have told too blatant of a lie about his involvement in the financial evaluations done by the Trump organization. And not only that, failed to produce evidence in discovery, which is a big no-no. As Letitia James's office said in a letter to the court that it identified likely omissions in documents produced by the defendants related to 2016 exchanges with Forbes magazine about the value of Trump's real estate assets. And where it's really unfortunate for them is that they likely won't be able to use a defense that it was done in error, because some of the emails of which Letitia James's office is referring to were turned over in this discovery process, but a small portion of them were not. And the ones that were not turned over were responsive to the discovery obligations, but also those specific emails likely prove that Weisselberg knew a lot more about what was going on with these inflated asset valuations than he is willing to admit at court. So it makes him look super fucking guilty. So the attorney trying the case wants the independent monitor that was put in charge of the Trump organization to make sure they don't commit no more fucking crimes to execute some kind of internal review of all the communications in possession of the Trump organization that fit the bill, like the time, the general time around when these emails were supposedly sent, just to make sure that they weren't withholding evidence that should have been turned over in discovery. So this is potentially damning for both Weisselberg, which could blow up his deal and get him sent back to Rikers, and it's really, really bad for the Trump org. I mean, this is just going to blow them the fuck up. And again, this isn't the only damning evidence, which is what's so fucking crazy. There's just more and more. It's nonstop. It just keeps pouring out. There's a fucking deluge of damning evidence and testimony presented by one witness in one document after another. It's just nonstop. It's fucking endless. And this trial is going to go on for quite a while, so just expect more and more. Expect more and more. Oh, and in case you thought, mainstream media, that I forgot about Anthony Pratt, the billionaire box dude from Australia, I did not. Over the course of the weekend, it appears as though 60 Minutes Australia received a number of recordings of Anthony Pratt talking about his various interactions with Trump and the fact that he spends quite a bit of money on Trump and on Trump's businesses in exchange for political influence, and, you know, basically just like he basically pays Trump off for things he think might be potentially beneficial that work in his favor. You know, surprise here, but this is the same guy who Trump was sharing our nuclear secrets with. And he made a number of revelations about the things that Trump has told him, including that, like, you know, blackmailing the president of Ukraine into trying to investigate his political opponent is like the least of the things that Trump was doing. So, yeah, that's fucking insane. And also, I mean, just like things like spending $1 million on $50,000 worth of tickets to an event at a Trump property. And like Republicans care about James Biden paying Joe back for a loan. Like, it's absolutely fucking bananas. Just the utter hypocrisy. Just, I mean, Jesus Christ. But yeah, we'll talk about that more on the next episode. So make sure you subscribe. Turn on your alerts so you can get a notification. And of course, before we wrap it up, Republicans appear to have selected a Speaker of the House, finally, after weeks of circle jerking to no avail. And of course, the individual that they arrived upon to lead them into the 2024 election was, of course, Mike Johnson, election denier. He is the House rep most largely responsible for organizing the Republican effort in 2024 to overturn the election by not voting to certify Biden's electors, even though Biden legally won the 2020 election. So congratulations, guys. Everyone is flipping on Trump at the same time that you selected a guy who was part of the plot to run the House of Representatives. Ace job, geniuses. You guys are going to have an indicted former president and an indicted sitting Speaker of the House. Congratulations. You earned it. Expect to be crying more, just like Jenna Ellis. And that concludes this episode of Pardon the Insurrection.